How to Christmas cactus like a pro. Um, these plants are found this time of the year everywhere. They have beautiful blooms, and I think everyone has some type of childhood memories that actually are brought up right in this time of the year. For me personally, when I was a child, when I was 7, 8 years old, I remember going to my grandma and she had a huge Christmas cactus and it was in bloom. And besides all the smile and happiness that she was having to see us, besides all the nice smells during the winter, people cooking all these delicious things, she had a beautiful Christmas cactus, a huge one. It was in blooms, and I always liked it. And I actually never thought of it until this year. I went to, I think Trader Joe's, and I found this this cactus there, and I just remembered my grandma all of a sudden, and all those childhood memories. And I believe everyone has some type of memories like that. But that brought me to research. I had to see how to care for it, and the reason being is that I had a couple smaller ones that I got from Amazon, and I intentionally didn't clean it because I wanted to show it. I wanted to show how root rot looks like. So this is how root rot looks like, and I didn't really do anything to it like differently than the other ones because I have a couple more also, and they just look fine. But this one died, so not the whole plant, just part of it. So I was trying to think how to care for it, how to grow these cactuses, and the care includes something very interesting. It likes the temperature to be 65 degrees. It has to be 65 degrees Fahrenheit. If the temperature goes too up or too down, the cactus is unable to absorb the water, it's unable to grow, and that's what causes to have root rot. So how do you care for a Christmas cactus to prevent all the troubles and keep the plant to grow big and alive, and maybe keep it for many years to come? And let's start with care. The plant really likes indirect light, and it has to be bright. You cannot put it just in a corner. It has to have bright light, and it has to have a well-drained soil. Like it has to be chunky. Although everything I bought from store actually doesn't have a chunky soil, so I have to repot them. It's important for your plant to have good pots with drainage holes. You don't want the water to stay in there. You really want the soil to be moist, but you don't want the soil to be soggy. So it's very important also to fertilize your cactus, and you need to do that during the growing season, and it needs to be stopped in October. These plants, if you keep fertilizing them, then the blooms will appear earlier than it's supposed to be. So October is the last month of the year when you can keep fertilizing them. It's very important for them to have humidity. They do like humidity, so make sure you provide the humidifier for them. It's very important to also remember that the Christmas cactuses are very prone to root rot. So if you don't meet one of the criteria, you'll probably end up with a wilting, dying plant. And the major things to remember is bright indirect light, temperature 65 Fahrenheit, it likes humidity, not too much water, soil needs to be moist but not soggy, drainage in the pots, and you want to have it in a stable environment. You don't want the temperature to go up and down all the time. Blooms. You can see that these plants have absolutely gorgeous blooms, and they can come in different colors. They can come in red, pink, peach, yellow, white, and I think even purple. And sometimes you can see something like in this plant. The blooms were here, but they didn't bloom and they just falling out. And this is because the plant is stressed. That means that the plant was either overwatered, underwatered. I'm guilty of underwatering this plant. So it was overwatered, underwatered, or they had enough light, temperature was too high or too low, or it was dropping in temperature. And all of these things can make your blooms to wilt, and they will fall before they even got a chance to bloom. For you to have blooms, you need to make sure that you give it 12 to 14 hours of dark time, complete darkness during fall, that will trick the plant into blooming for you. As I said, fertilizing should be stopped at in month of October, and that way you'll keep having your blooms in the right time for the plant. If you have a wilting plant, you'll have to actually check how the soil is. Is it too wet? Is it too dry? Maybe it doesn't have enough light. It doesn't have, it's not fertilized. Temperature is going up and down. It doesn't have humidity. If everything is in check, if you are giving it bright light, if your soil is not wet or not too dry, and you give it humidity, and the plant is still wilting, that means that you need to repot your plant. The soil is not good anymore for this plant. When repotting this plant, it's very important to actually give it a chunky soil, and it's very important to be gentle so you don't break them. And then you just give it water, put it in a bright spot, and let it be. People are actually searching for their Christmas cactus turning red or turning purple or yellowing. All of that is a cause of some type of stressor. So it's very important to make sure that your cactus is not near a direct heat, so it's not near ventilators. And it's very important to see if it doesn't have too much direct sun. It doesn't like direct sun, it likes bright light, but it needs to be indirect. These cactuses cannot grow outside because you cannot control outside. They like a controlled environment. They like to be taken care of. So it's best for you to keep your cactus inside for an optimal thriving. So these cactuses are very prone to root rot. So my advice is to be very careful when you're giving it water. And like I showed you in this case, half of my plant is actually wilting and half is thriving. And I did water it the same. So the soil is not too wet, it's not too dry. And what happened, this plant was in a next to another plant, and this one had light, and this one, the big leaf from my other plant, was covering this part. So my thinking is that it probably wilted because it didn't have lights. It was in the dark from the other plant. Because if root rot starts in the whole plant, it's gonna kind of be the same. And in this case, we can see that two of them are thriving, and the ones that were on the side where it was covered are dead because of root rot. It probably doesn't absorb the water the same way as when they are placed in the bright light. If you want to propagate these cactuses, it's very easy to propagate. You actually just cut about 2 to 4 inch, and you can use it with root hormone and place it in the soil, and you'll see roots in about 2 to 4 weeks. Or you can put it in the root hormone and put it in the water, and roots will appear in 3 to 6 weeks. I don't think you actually need to use the root hormone. That's just to speed up the process. You can just, I remember my grandma had it just, if a piece of the plant would break, she would just stick it back in the soil. So probably that is working too. But when you propagate these plants in water, it requires more maintenance. It's a longer process, and when it's in the soil, it's a lot easier and much faster. And that way you also can kind of look at your plant. Like, for example, this one, if I would like to make it look more fuller, I can see that on this side it's fuller, while on this side it's more bolder. So I would just take the cuttings and just stick them in the bolding sides, and that way you'll have a fuller plant and it's going to grow bigger. There are also Christmas cactuses, and there's Thanksgiving cactuses and Easter cactuses, and the only difference between them, besides the leaves and the flower, is that they bloom in different times of the year. These cactuses are actually called Zygo cactuses, but because uh, it blooms during Christmas, this got the name of Christmas. The ones that are blooming during Easter, they get the name Easter cactus, and the one during Thanksgiving, it's a Thanksgiving cactus. I was thinking that it's going to be fun to actually have all three of them potted together, and that way you can have, like, you know, a blooming plant all year round. You can just, I'm thinking about doing that too. So this is all for the how to cactus like a pro. And what we need to remember is that it needs indirect light, that it needs to have a stable temperature of 65 Fahrenheit. It needs to be fertilized until the month of October. It needs 12 to 14 hours of darkness, especially in the fall. It needs a chunky soil. It needs humidity, and it doesn't like the temperature drop. It doesn't like direct sun. It doesn't like to be placed next to a vent.